He was assassinating a target when he accidentally saw a beautiful woman, but he knew he couldn't let a woman distract him. It would make him look unprofessional, but he couldn't help but look twice. But he pulled himself together in time. Then the target sat down on the couch. His entire body was exposed to view. Killer glanced at his watch. Heart rate was 65. Right on schedule. If he strikes now, it's a sure thing. He pulls the trigger quickly and holds his breath, aimed precisely at the target. Then he fired without hesitation. What he didn't realize was that the beautiful woman had stopped the bullet for his target. When he pulled the trigger to fire a second shot, the curtains were already closed, and he didn't give him another chance. He quickly disassembled the gun. Then he went downstairs and got on a motorbike he prepared. When the police arrived, he fled the scene. He escaped on the motorbike, throwing his gear. Then he turns into an alley. Then he comes back to the bridge and throws his helmet into the sea. The man enters a public toilet next to a convenience store. He wipes his body with paper to get rid of the odor. He's clean shaven. On his way out, he sprays some perfume to get rid of the odor. After leaving the house, he takes a taxi to the airport. When he arrives at the airport, he throws the last of his defensive handguns into the trash. He's a detail freak. And there's more. When he entered the airport to go through the security checkpoint, he found the police with a police dog talking at the checkpoint. Killer's first thought was the dog. He couldn't fall for a dog at the last minute. His expression is calm and unmoving. Then he looks around a bit more and turns to leave. The man goes to the bathroom. He rearranges his clothes to make sure there's no odor left. Finally, he throws his watch into the rubbish bin. The killer made it through security without a hitch. He finds a discreet location and calls his handler. He told him the mission had failed. The handler was surprised and disappointed, because this killer had never failed before. The killer didn't want to listen to him, he just hung up. He gets in the cockpit of the plane and doesn't relax. He's always watching his surroundings. One of them, a man in a suit wearing sunglasses, struck him as suspicious. Soon the plane arrived at the transit airport. At the security checkpoint, the killer saw the man in the suit again. But the man in the suit didn't do anything out of the ordinary. In the waiting area, the killer glanced over. The man in the suit with his legs crossed came into his view again. So the killer made a decision to give up flying for the time being. He stayed at the airport hotel, but he still couldn't let his guard down. He ordered a steak and had it delivered to his room. When the waiter leaves, the killer picks up the glass and the steak lid and walks to the door. The glass was placed upside down on the doorknob and the steak lid was placed directly underneath. If someone enters the room, the killer can react immediately. Then the killer sat on the sofa with a knife instead of eating. Spent the whole night on the sofa. The next day, the killer carefully opened a doorway. He made sure it was safe before stepping out. After getting on the plane, the killer breathed a sigh of relief. Soon the plane landed at the airport of the Dominican Republic. He drove to his secret villa. As soon as he arrived at the door, he noticed a pair of large suspicious footprints. The assassin immediately took out his pistol from the car. Dropping the car, he ran forward quickly, keeping an eye on the villa. After a short distance, he saw the footprints again. This convinced him that the villa had been attacked. But when he entered, he found no one. Inside the house was a complete mess. He picked up the landline and dialed a number. He learned that his beloved was in intensive care. He learned from his lover's brother that the assailants were a man and a woman. During the fight, his brother hurt one of them. They left in a green car that looked like a taxi. The killer stabilized his brother. He promised him that he would never allow such a thing to happen again. The man digs up a spot in his backyard. He took the blanket and found a safe. Fingerprints unlock it. He takes 3 plastic bags out of the safe. The bags contained his secret weapon. Then the man gets in his car and wanders the streets. Finally, he found the green taxi that his brother had told him about. Late at night, he arrives at the door of the green taxi company. He bangs on the window to get the guard to open the door. But as soon as he opens the door, the killer puts on his hood and raises his gun. He searched through a stack of files to find a record of the taxi's driver on the day of the accident. Eventually, he came up with a young man named Leo, so as not to arouse the security guard's suspicion. On his way out, he messed up the scene to make it look like a robbery. The next day, he staked out the door. Finally, he saw Leo come to work. Then he pretended to be a tourist and got into Leo's taxi. Leo turned his head and saw the man pointing a gun at him. Leo thought he was a robber, so he quickly gave the killer all the change he had. And the killer got straight to the point, asking about what happened 3 days ago. Leo told him about the man and the woman he was carrying. But the killer had one rule: to show mercy is to be at war with yourself. So he sent Leo straight to his lunchbox. The killer changes passports at every airport. It's a basic skill. In order to catch whoever was behind the murders, the assassin was going to sneak up on his handler. He changed his passport at every airport. This is the most basic skill of this killer. In order to catch the person behind the murder, he prepares to steal his own cap. First, he rents a white van. He has 6,000 warehouses in New Orleans. Each warehouse is filled with a variety of firearms and equipment. There's a box full of brand new license plates. He puts them right on the van so he can change them whenever he wants. If you've seen the film often, you know that a perfect battle plan is the key to success. A perfect battle plan is essential for success. He bought a large push bin and an orange toolbox. Then he dresses up as a caretaker. He eats a banana and waits for the right moment. Dolores #1 came into view. There's a camera from the 80s at her workplace, but that didn't stop the killer. It wasn't long before a courier arrived. As the courier greeted the camera, the killer followed him with a rubbish bin.
Thank you so much, man. You're a lifesaver.
He calmly puts on his plastic gloves. When he saw the courier enter the 4th floor, he slowly followed him. Then he waited silently for the courier to push open the bulletproof glass door. The killer reads the time it will take for the door to close. When the door closed, he took 2 steps forward. He looked inside the door. Seeing that the courier was about to go out, he leaned down and pretended to drink. The courier pulls the door open. The killer drinks the water and times it. He doesn't want to involve other innocent people so as not to scare them. When the courier stepped into the lift, he stuck out his foot and blocked the door. Dolores was still unpacking the courier. He carefully pulled the orange suitcase out of the bin. Then he walked in with a pistol in his right hand. Dolores was just an assistant. There was a barrister Edward in the room. Edward's the one who spoke to the killer in the first place. He was surprised to see the killer, but he wasn't scared. Edward was there to reassure Dolores that it would be over in a moment. The killer took some black ties out of a box. He threatened Dolores and walked towards Edward and tied his hands to the chair. In Edward's opinion, the killer's actions were completely taboo. It could have serious and unforeseen consequences, but the killer was silent. He simply told Dolores to hide in the bathroom and left her to tie her arms with her own zip ties. Edward warned the killer not to do anything. The killer had all the money in the world because of Edward, but the killer just wants to know who did this to the love of his life. Edward says that since the mission failed, the client will want you to take responsibility. This is your punishment. Edward clearly didn't realize the danger he was in.